Hi, uh, happy December. Um, yeah, I'll talk a little about politics today, but I'm going to talk about religion. In fact, the Gospels, because I do operate a Christian left column. This is Michael Bender. For those of you who don't know, it'll be on the screen if you're looking at it. So, I was watching James Tabor the other night, last night, and yesterday morning, early, and he talked about the Gospels, the synoptic Gospels, which is one of his things he talked about to his students. And I was thinking, okay, where did Luke get it? Where did Luke get Q, or where did it come from? Um, there's an argument to be made that it came from the Didache or Didache or whatever it's however you say it, and that would have been made by James. Um, yeah, Tabor also argues that that Paul is behind Mark, um, rather than than Luke for being writing for Paul, which makes sense because if you look at Luke, there's a lot of Peter in Luke. I mean, a lot of the things that Luke knew about, something he would have known from James and John and Peter. The ones who went up to Mount Tabor for the Transfiguration. That was Peter, James and John. The three friends of Jesus. Um, so yeah, the stories that if Peter, James, and John were the people who gave Luke information, then Luke was probably in Antioch, um, writing things down that Peter said. So, or even writing things down, or taking what others wrote down contemporaneously, because sayings of Jesus, you know, Jews were of that time were very literate. They would have written stuff down. Somebody might have been the official writer downer. Remember, Jesus was building the kingdom of heaven on earth. So I'm sure he had somebody, scribing for him. It's like if your goal is to transform the world starting in the Messianic vision, which later was raised to another level, then yeah, you would writing things down, and maybe Peter had those stacks, and gave them to Luke. Uh, the Didache, um, that includes some of Matthew. Um, so the Sermon on the Mount essentially. So, and Matthew or Luke, did anybody look that hard? What last I read about it, it had Matthew in it. So maybe Matthew used the Didache, rather than the other way around, which could have been. So the Didache could be the Q source, the Quorel. So, um, and if Luke used that, he also would have used Peter, and of course Luke used Mark, and Tabor thinks that Mark came from Paul, and that the narrative from Paul came from what he learned, but also what had to be according to the prophecy. So the question is, was the narrative constructed from what was expected? Um, so, which Mark would have known, because he was the first patriarch of and founder of the Alexandria church, um, where the Septuagint was written, and the Septuagint is different than the Hebrew Torah, in that it's um, it's Greek, and it's not Hebrew. And if you look at some of the language, it's got the prophetic tone to it. That stuff that wasn't in the Tanakh, which is the Old Testament and Jewish, but was in the Septuagint, which is what's in the Bible was in the Septuagint. What's used by originally used by the Orthodox and Latin churches. So, and there's an argument being made that Paul and Mark put together what had to have happened, or based what they knew about the story on, gave it a good prophetic. This happened, this happened, this happened according to prophecy. And Tabor makes a good argument. That's kind of what happened. Do we know what happened? No, it's people don't keep writing notes back when they're telling stories. Because remember, it's ritualistic literature, and for teaching, not dissertation notes. So yeah. So you would have, again, Paul to Mark to Luke, Peter to Luke, and James to the Didache and Matthew, or the same thing, either going to Luke, or what Tabor was saying in what was released yesterday, was that Matthew took Luke and edited it down a little, just to make it sing a little, to take out duplication, flowery language, and just shorten it up a little. So that could be. It's interesting to think about. It's like the original myth was that Mark was Peter's gospel, but maybe Mark was Paul's gospel, because the stuff that's in Luke, he had stuff again from Peter and from James and John. And James and John, remember, were if you ignore Jerome's "this had to be" version of the Jesus family, James and John were Zebedee's sons, and Salome, Jesus' sister, was likely their mother. So James and John wanting to inherit the kingdom on the right and left thrones. That wasn't a request based on pride. It was based on, I'm in your family. We're your favorite nephews, so we're with you, and our uncles aren't. So shouldn't we have shouldn't we be there? And he says, you must serve. Yeah. Only 3 people were on Mount Tabor with Jesus and Moses and Elijah. And their names were Peter, James, and John. And there's stuff that in Luke that only they would have known. So, yeah, it's at least firsthand. So, yeah, Peter to Luke, which means probably in Antioch. Paul to Mark, probably in either or Mark independently in Alexandria, or in Asia Minor someplace, and then of course James in Jerusalem. With at the time the family the Jerusalem was the headquarters, and so the Didache probably came out of Jerusalem, which means it was probably James, and maybe with some Matthew thrown in. Matthew was thrown in, but what order it was added is lost to time. So, because it kind of was that book, which was the proto-Bible essentially, kind kind of got stuff thrown in, thrown out. It was a ritual manual as well. It was actually, a Bible of, this is how you do the sacrament, that sacrament. This is what Jesus said on the Sermon on the Mount. This is what, and so, yeah. And maybe Matthew wrote that down. And then Luke enriched, we don't know. But it's an interesting thing to talk about, and that's what Tabor talks about. So yeah, that's tape one of early the 4th of December. Thank you for your attention.